Hello, coaches! Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better Spotlight. Today, I'm chatting with David Lee, elementary STEM coach at Singapore American School in Singapore. In today's Spotlight episode, David talks about the challenges teachers face in trying to implement so many different initiatives and the value of seeing themselves as designers using the design thinking method. This mind shift empowers teachers to customize curriculum and new initiatives to create the best learning experiences for their students. All right, welcome back to another episode of Coach Better from Edurolearning. I am here this morning with David Lee from Singapore American School. David, can you tell us a little bit about your education experience?
Yes, I started at Korea International School as a technology teacher for PK to second grade. And then as I got into that position, I started integrating with teachers, and Ben Summerton, who is the tech coordinator, let me be in his ed tech team, which was really cool. I grew a lot from that. And so I did ed tech while I was teaching technology for a couple of years. And then I moved into STEM coordinating for 3 years. And then now I am the STEM coach at Singapore American School for the elementary department.
So cool. Now, you and Ben worked together in Korea, and then did you and Ben, I actually don't know the timeline, did you and Ben come at the same time to SAS, or did one of you come before the other?
Yeah, he came before.
Got it.
Yeah, so.
And you're back on the same team again. That must feel good.
Yep, he sits right next to me. It's a blast hanging out with him all the time and doing our work.
So tell me a little bit about the STEM coordinator position. How is it similar or different to your other experience? Like, what is it like? Well,
KIS defines STEM as more of basically taking all the subject areas and using its knowledge and skill, the standards basically, and then producing performance tasks. We call them culminating challenges. And so it did require one person kind of coordinating all these subject areas, all these specialists and homeroom teachers, and sit down and produce this performance task, design it, and then implement it as well. Because not only was I the STEM coordinator, but I was the design teacher. And I used design thinking, the design thinking method, which is just a creative problem-solving process and mindsets. And a lot of the times they were applying what they're learning from social studies, from all these from science, all these different areas, and applying it into my class. So it was pretty dynamic and cool.
And how is that different to what you're doing now, or is that pretty much the same? Like, what would you say is the big difference?
Yeah, I'm not the one kind of coordinating all that anymore. Okay. I'm coming in to kind of coach and consult, but also to help teachers move towards STEM. And it's a gradual process. But I've been really focused on being in every classroom. I'm in charge of 4th and 5th, and being in every classroom and doing design thinking activities, so that the students at least get an understanding of the method and then can apply it into units. And it's been somewhat successful because a lot of some of the performance tasks that were developed, the students used design thinking to kind of navigate through those problems, driving questions. So.
Nice. So you're specifically connected to, I know you said in charge of, right? But you're specifically connected with grade 4 and 5. Mm-hmm. How do you build rapport amongst those grade 4 and 5 teachers? How do you make connections with those colleagues? It's really great that you're assigned specifically to a set of grade levels, because I know SAS is so big, but what do you do to kind of make those connections with individual teachers on those grade levels?
Yeah, this whole year has been a transition for the whole ed tech team. And I'm part of that ed tech team. We are in the beginning of the year, we were kind of designated these grade levels, but now we're learning that all of us are working in different grade levels. So I've been working with a whole bunch of other, not just 4th and 5th, but with the report, I kind of just dived into, I just asked if I can be part of, so I basically dived in and asked them if I could be part of their unit development. And so I've been in meetings where they talked about their standards, talk about the concepts that were being taught. And through that, I kind of, went through the process of creating performance tasks with the team. So I was being involved from ground zero and then actually helping them implement the project really, I think, helped with that.
Do you have any teaching load?
No, I don't.
So that helps a lot, right? Because you're free whenever they need you, you can be available. And you said that at the beginning of the year, you were kind of assigned year for a grade 4 and 5, but over the course of the year, the whole team has kind of realized, well, you have different areas of specialty, and now you might work with every grade level because you're focusing primarily on STEM as opposed to just being ed tech for grade 4 and 5.
Absolutely.
Have you found any strategies are working better to help support STEM specifically in different grade levels as compared to how you might do just like general ed tech? Do you notice any difference there, or is it really, what do you think?
Well, in the past when I did ed tech, I think iPads were really big, and so ed tech specialists were designing really engaging activities. But I think there was maybe this is an assumption, but they distanced themselves from the curriculum. And what I found was it really helps for any coach to know the curriculum and know all the standards. And because you will be way more effective knowing all those standards, knowing what the students need to know and what what they need to be able to do, then you can create really cool, meaningful, like real world projects. That's more, I think, engaging in a more meaningful way instead of just like shock value.
I totally agree. Sorry, I'm trying to take notes.
No problem.
I just want to reiterate, make sure I understood. In your previous experience, you found that the EdTech facilitators focused a lot more on the tools than knowing the curriculum. And so now in your current role, you're finding yourself that you are really focusing in on what the curricular needs are in terms of teachers and in terms of what we want students to know and be able to do. And that's helping you make more meaningful connections that aren't specifically necessarily tied into the tool, but more related to their curriculum.
Yeah, the tool is the easiest part to implement. Like when you go through that whole process of unit planning, the tool is like, oh, okay, now we have this really cool performance task that the students will be excited about. Oh, and then there's this tool. And so the tool becomes like the second thing you don't really concentrate on.
I totally agree. Yeah. Did you find that was a culture of this school, a culture of because you're actually working with someone from your previous team. So how do you think that transition is why do you think that's so different at this school as compared to your last school?
No, it's similar. It's very similar. What I was more talking about what I see on Twitter and what I see on Instagram.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the schools. The schools, I mean, I've known Ben for forever, and like he is one of the few tech coordinators who talk about student learning. Like literally every conversation, he'll say those words: student learning, students. And that's not happening. Like I've heard a tech coordinator say like, I don't want to do anything about that. I don't want to be involved in curriculum, or it becomes this like the sexy thing to do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you were speaking from personal experience there, so I was really interested to hear what that's been like for you, that transition. Yeah, I think it's a big issue, specifically with technology coaching, technology facilitation in general. It's a lot about, and to be honest, it kind of goes both ways, right? The coaches see the path of shiny new technology as being fun and kind of easy to get into. And the teachers also see the same thing. Oh, it's something new. I should be doing something new. What's the new thing? And so it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy that happens if you don't focus on student learning. So yeah, I think I mean, I'm on board entirely, because my whole first conversation is always, what do you want students to know and be able to do? And if the teacher can't answer that question, I don't have anything else to say but to help them figure out, what do you want students to know and be able to do? Because that's the only way we can successfully work together. Otherwise, it's just me coming in and showing you tools, which is useless.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the standards. So yeah.
Okay, so thinking about kind of building this culture of coaching at SAS and the transition that you've gone through in terms of this year, starting out as being primarily focused on grade 4 and 5, and now kind of spreading around the whole elementary school. How are you working on building that culture of coaching and getting people to feel comfortable working with you and seeing you as a coach? What are you doing?
It's the same as the culture of teaching, right? So teachers, they facilitate students to get to where we want them to be through scaffolding of learning, and it's the same for coaches as well. We facilitate teachers to improve their instruction and help design better learning experiences. So it's the same, and also a coach and teacher, like a coach, the coach and teacher relationship is more of a partnership. I think a lot of times teachers think coaches come in and kind of tell you what to do, and that's how it is. I think it's more where it's two professionals coming together to create something really awesome, to have a common goal, because both have experience, both have expertise in their own fields. So it's more of a partnership. And because of that relationship, I think coaches will need to show teachers that they're designers. They're going to take an active role in this problem or this scenario. And so it takes a lot of creative problem solving and a lot of critical thinking that can be difficult for some teachers because, maybe in the past the coaches told them exactly what to do, and they just did it, right? Where if they were critical thinking, they had that partnership relationship. Things could be altered. You could be agile, be adaptable. So yeah.
Tell me, when you're talking about being designers and taking an active role in the creative problem solving, tell me more about what does that look like in practice?
Well, usually, especially, I think for all schools, there's constantly initiatives being given to these teachers and coaches. And a lot of times, some of these initiatives, and even like consultants coming in, telling you what to do, they all kind of contradict each other. And you can't take all of these approaches, and it's not like the Bible. You don't kind of do exactly what they're saying. You basically take the best parts and kind of create your own little thing for your school, right? And I think a lot of times teachers are just kind of told what to do, and they try to fit these things that don't really fit, or try to do something that doesn't really work. But if they're kind of given that leeway, if they're seen as designers for education experiences, then they can alter things and move on the fly and I think be more effective in their implementation.
I love that idea of seeing teachers as designers and being able to customize. I think we all work in schools that have a lot of professional development opportunities, and you described it really well that, teachers are trying to fit, 15 million things into this same small box, and, they've been doing it year after year after year after year. So this idea of seeing themselves as designers, and they can customize all those different pieces to make it fit best for their learners in their classroom. To me, that must feel really empowering for your teaching colleagues to have that mental shift.
Yeah, in KIS, that was huge. I looked at project-based learning, and I looked at PYP, and I looked at design thinking, all those things. And you just kind of mesh it together where it fits. You don't just force things in and just say, oh, we're doing project-based learning. Oh, we're doing PYP. You can pick and choose. That was the cool part of that like whatever makes sense to the teachers and whatever's best for the students. If you kind of have that in your head constantly, then you can manipulate things for that goal.
Absolutely. And I think that is a huge benefit of being in an international school and not necessarily a school where there's government mandates that you have to do X, Y, and Z exactly as it's been written. So we are really fortunate that we can have all of this great input come in and then customize things the way that they would work best, even down to the individual classroom, which is really cool.
Right.
Okay, so this may not be a problem for you, but I work with lots of coaches, and one of the questions they often ask me is, how do you stay motivated when you might be the only person who's super passionate about STEM, let's say, for example, and, usually as coaches, we're kind of on like a faster speed than maybe the teachers or the school culture in general. So how do you, for yourself, stay motivated as a coach?
I think as a coach, like whatever you're trying to have teachers do, whatever approach that you're trying to kind of sell or educate, you have to really believe in it, like truly believe it's best for the students. And also for me personally, I constantly think about my own schooling experience, like in the 90s and 2000s, and I think about it, and I feel like I don't remember any of the content.
I hear you.
And like after graduating high school, my confidence level was so low, and I just felt like I didn't have the innate traits that were blessed with other people that other people had, and as I, got into teaching and got into my career, I realized I was missing these skills and dispositions and mindsets that just were never talked about at school. And so I think about those things constantly, and I feel like I didn't, as a high schooler, I didn't hit my fullest potential in elementary and middle school, and that kind of really slightly upsets me. And so I'm motivated to make sure that students that I teach and I'm involved with have experiences that will really get them ready, have them confident when they leave school, and not be like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And so basically simulate the real world, right? And give them the skills and dispositions that will help them to be successful.
Yeah, I think about that a lot too. I don't want to like trash talk my high school because I think I went to a good high school, but I definitely
me too,
don't. Yeah, I don't think that it was as real world as many of us are trying to make school today. Mm-hmm. And I think about that all the time. And I really love that you say you kind of go back to your own personal experience and when you left not feeling, confident. I kind of look at the skills that I need to function today as an adult. And then I think about, I was not taught any of those things in school.
Right.
Maybe not any, right? I don't want to trash talk anybody. But I was not taught many of those skills in school, and especially the skills that have to do with using technology to communicate like we're doing right now. I know that those things weren't available when I was in high school, but there are so many critical skills that we talk about being just everyday skills like communication, collaboration, and we can do those things in the classroom, but we don't often make that kind of next step, that next level to use those skills in like a digital sense. So I think that is a really interesting connection. I look at it from the perspective of every day, what are the skills that I need? And I want to make sure those are taught in my classroom. And you're thinking about what are the skills I left school wishing I knew, realizing I didn't learn. I want to make sure those are taught. I think that comes back to why teaching is so personal, right? It's that connection to your own experience that you just kind of carry around with you.
Right.
Do you ever find, either in this role or your role at KIS, that teachers don't always understand what your role is as a coach? How do you deal with that? How do you help them understand your job?
Yeah, I think I was lucky enough to be in my like ed tech roles. I was lucky enough to still be teaching too. Like I told the principal, I don't want to do full-time ed tech. I want to be in the classroom, and that really helped me to understand what was going on in the homeroom classes and all the specials and stuff like that. But now that I'm full-time, the STEM coach, I find that the teachers will know what you do if you, again, develop units with them and develop these performance tasks, and then help them to implement that performance task. So that's a long journey, and so they'll know exactly what you're doing. I don't think they will be asking that question if you're constantly in that meeting and not just kind of sitting there, but like you're involved, you're collaborating to develop it, right? So
I don't know if you've been following, and this is going to timestamp this call, which I don't really want, but that's okay. We are currently doing a little challenge called I Heart Coaching on Twitter, and we've been talking about, what we love about being a coach. And I always repeat the same story because it's one that really had an impact on me. When I was at ISB, one of our visiting consultants, Pam Harper from Fieldwork Education, I was struggling because my job title at International School Bangkok at the time was 21st Century Literacy Specialist. Right. Which when I was hired, I thought, oh, that's so cool. I have this vision for what this job is. But really, no one else had any understanding, what is even 21st century literacy? No one knew. And I remember having a session with her, and she was like, Kim, people will understand what your job is by what you do every day. You are what you do. And you just described that really well. Going in, and the things that you prioritize are the things that other teachers are going to understand. This is my job. Yeah. So how did you get in there at the start? If teachers know what your job is by if teachers know what your job is by developing units with them and being an active collaborator, how did you just get in there straight away? Because sometimes teachers don't necessarily want you in those planning meetings. Is it the structure of the school that was already set up that way? Did you find that was really easy for you?
Yeah, I think basically, it's a very collaborative school. So the homeroom teachers and the instructional coaches, curriculum people, they all come and meet. But I was never invited, but I just basically asked, and I guess they were being polite, or I don't know. But they let me come to the sessions, and initially I can kind of see curious faces, why is David here? But once we started, talking and collaborating, they were thankful to have another perspective, that like a STEM tech perspective, there to kind of help out, and having that experience in the past of developing these type of performance tasks really helped. So just ask, and then just ask, I guess. Yeah.
I think that's realistic. That's what you're going to have to do, right? Go in there and be proactive. I think sometimes coaches can get stuck because they will feel like, why am I not on the agenda? Or why have I not been invited? Or why have I not been sent a calendar invitation? And kind of the moral of the story is to remember that generally speaking, your job as a coach is much more flexible with time and energy and all those kinds of things than a classroom teacher. So if you were left off the agenda, don't take that personally. That person is very busy. Just show up and say, hey, can I come in and work with you today? So I think that idea of being that self-starter is really important to remember.
Absolutely.
Do you have any strategies for collecting data from your coaching role? Do you do any kind of data collection? And if you do, what does that look like?
I think that's one of the things I need to work on, one of my weaknesses. But as a ed tech team, we have SMART goals that we try to hit. For this year, it's through collaborative work. We want 100% of our students to be involved in a unit that integrates technology or some type of STEM project or design project meaningfully. So that's our SMART goal. One thing I do want to try is, I kind of want to give out surveys to students before a unit where it's just kind of a normal unit where there's no performance task, and then after the unit, see how they felt about that learning experience. and then give that same survey after they do a unit that has a performance task, that to see if it's meaningful for them, if they are more engaged, if they learned more, if they have a deeper understanding of the content. That's one of my goals, is to create that survey.
I love that idea, and I love the idea of getting data from students on the impact of your coaching, because a lot of the times we think about the impact of coaching on teachers, but I think it would be very eye-opening and like a really easy way to have a great conversation with the teacher if you get that data from the students instead of from the teacher. So I can't wait to hear how that goes. When you get that all set up, let me know, because I would love to talk to you about it.
All right.
So it sounds like you have really settled in pretty naturally to your position at the school, which is great since you've only been there a short period. What are the ways that you make yourself invaluable to your colleagues? What are the ways that you kind of have made them love you?
So one of the strategies I've always used, and I don't know if this will be popular for coaches, but it's to make everything as easy and seamless as possible for the teachers, and that takes a lot of work. So, for example, the whole design thinking thing, they don't have a separate design teacher. So I basically said, okay, I'm willing to do this empathy challenge. It's 4 to 5 class sessions. I'll come in and kind of model it for you and for the students. And they always ask, okay, what do I have to prep? What do I have to get? And all that stuff. And I just said, just sit back and kind of relax and enjoy the experience. And that's been really powerful, because a lot of the teachers talk to each other and they're like, oh, you should try the empathy challenge. So I've been in a lot of classrooms, like 18 different classrooms for design thinking, and 12 classes for actually using design thinking for a unit. So it's spreading. And I think it's because of the ease. Like, the teachers didn't have to really set up anything to gain that understanding. And usually it would be a PD. Like, we gave out a PD, but not a lot of people came. I think the best thing to do is model. And so they were there and facilitating the whole time and listening to my little mini lessons and getting the idea of the mindsets and the process. So.
Yeah, taking the pressure off and making the experience of working with you as like fun and enjoyable as possible is definitely a good way to kind of spread the excitement and enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen, or do you ever feel that there is a situation when coaching just doesn't work, it fails? And when and how does that happen, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones is the coaches don't know the curriculum. So they don't know what's going on in the classroom. That's a huge one. When coaches are implementing things like straight from the book, maybe, I think it's extremely important for coaches to be reading the newest, books that are out there about the approach. But after you do that, you kind of synthesize it and take it to your school so that it will work. That's really important. And also, I'm very critical of like ed tech tools that are not open-ended. They're kind of prescribed and basically it doesn't require much critical thinking. So I like tools where it's like you can produce anything open-ended. So as a design teacher, I was a huge fan of hummingbirds because the students, it's very personal. The students decide on a problem, they brainstorm their own ideas, and then they create a prototype or like a blueprint of what they want to create. And you need tools that allow them to take that creative idea and actually have them produce it. And so hummingbirds, they're attached to Arduinos. These kids can program servo motors and sensors and all those things. And it's not prescribed. There's no like, oh, this is how you build a dinosaur robot. It's just basically this tool, again, just a tool that allows them to make their idea into a tangible thing. I think that's really powerful. So yeah, that's for EdTech coaches, I think.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said there, and most especially I struggle so much with the tools aspect of being in the tech field just in general. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like we were talking about earlier, that it's a kind of a snake biting its own tail kind of situation, because the coaches kind of perpetuate the enthusiasm over new things, and it leads the teachers to believe, well, they just need to know what the tool is. But really, it's about the learning and the thinking and the processing and the demonstrating of understanding. And it really usually doesn't even matter what tool you use, as long as the focus is on the learning and kind of kids demonstrating their understanding. So yeah, I'm on board with you.
Okay, all of those question for you. Sorry. Yeah. Like, knowing that you work with a lot of coaches, do majority of the coaches understand that aspect of ed tech, or do you see that there's a lot of like, oh, this new tool, we got to try this out?
The coaches that I spend my time with, as a professional, they understand that.
Right.
But I see lots of people beyond that scope. And I think very often it's especially new coaches who kind of get trapped in the tech tool trap. Mm-hmm. And like I say, that's because often that's what teachers are asking. So I'm not I don't want to blame either party, because I think it's kind of a cycle that fulfills itself. Mm-hmm. Teachers are asking, what's the next tool? So coaches are providing. But I think it's a history of that kind of being the way technology is in schools. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's a lot about the tools, and it should almost never be about the tools. But it's hard. I think it's hard to shift. It's hard. A lot of schools are making the transition away from even calling the job technology coach, and they're calling them, learning coaches or innovation coaches. And I think that's a really great trend, particularly that we're seeing in large Asian international schools, but maybe not so much on a broader scale. So I think it is definitely a challenge.
Okay.
So you're new this year. What would be your top tip for being a new coach in a school?
I would always say start small, more of grassroots approach, and everything. Everything I've kind of introduced to teachers, I basically started small. So I would do it in a club, or I'll try it in my own classroom. And little by little, when you bring in teachers, they spread the word. They kind of do that work for you, because there's no point of me just saying, oh, you want to try this, you want to try this, you want to try this. Like, they'll be more convinced if their peers say, try it. So I would say start small. Find someone who is willing to try it out. But also constantly empathize with the teacher who you kind of know would not be willing to try it, so that you can be adaptable if the opportunity presents itself.
That is such great advice, and it's exactly the advice that I would give too. Like that, I think the idea that teachers will be more inspired to try something if their colleagues try it and have success is such a powerful way to spread great teaching and learning, so much better than you as a coach standing up in front of others and saying, oh, this is what you should do, because people have that mentality that, oh, of course they can do it. They're the coach, right? But seeing my colleague who I've been working with for the last 5 years give it a try and enjoy it, oh, that's so much more impactful for other teachers. So totally agree with you there. All right, last question. What is one resource you would recommend, and why was it impactful for your practice? This can be anything. It can be a book you read, a podcast you listened to, a video you watched, a tool you use, whatever, anything that you think is your number one that's worth recommending.
For me, Creative Confidence by David and Tom Kelly changed my life in the way I thought of things. Out of high school, out of college, I wasn't very confident in myself. But the book kind of maps out the mindsets that you need to be successful. And creativity is very important because it's involved in when you're solving problems, when you're given a task, you need creativity. And the whole idea that everyone is creative, it's just that you kind of have to work on it, that kind of blew me away. So I'd recommend that book. And I also want to mention one book I just recently finished called Radical Collaboration. I find that a lot of schools talk about growth mindset, talk about collaboration, communication, all of these things, but a lot of times I don't think like specific skills and strategies are taught. So like it would be really benefit, like Radical Collaboration for me, I got a whole bunch of strategies on how to be better collaborators, not only with as an adult, but I can take those things that businesses use and help them to be successful, and then give those strategies to like elementary kids. And I think that's extremely empowering.
Oh, I love it. All right. Those are two great resources. Thank you so much. Where can our listeners find you online if they want to learn more from David Lee?
You can find my stuff on davidleeedtech.org. And basically every social media platform, I'm under David Lee EdTech. And I'm doing a lot more YouTube, like I'm making a lot more videos. So you should check that out too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time this morning, David. That was great. I really enjoyed hearing your own experience of transitioning to kind of such a big school and seeing how you're able to make that be really successful for you in your first year at Singapore American School. So thank you.
You're welcome.